Urgil, I have this weird feeling that if our keynoter were here while you are now, he might also be studying what you are, a combination of econ and data science, and you are focused on equity. So I'll let you take it away, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So hi guys, I'm Urjil, a junior, and I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Arvind Raghunathan today. I hope you all can hear me well. All good? Okay. So Dr. Arvind Raghunathan received his bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from IIT Chennai in India in 1984. And after that, he did his PhD in computer science from Cal in 1988. After graduating from Berkeley, Dr. Raghunathan was a faculty member of the computer science department at New York University and the University of California, Davis. Between 1992 and 2009, he led the proprietary trading group and global arbitrage division at Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank before founding Rock Capital with his partners in 2009. Primarily focused on quantitative equities trading and statistical arbitrage, it was the largest hedge fund launch of that year post-financial crisis. In early 2014, the group saw an unmet need to bring institutional quality capital to investors in the middle market, providing participants in the residential markets an structured way to build wealth. Since then, Rock 360 has been focused on providing a full life cycle platform to real estate investors through its vertically integrated financial services platform, with services including Rock Capital Lending, Elmshore Property Insurance, Wimba Title Insurance, and its affinity partnerships. With an entrepreneurial spirit, research-driven investment strategy, and a common sense approach to lending, Rock 360 subsidiary has doubled loans funded each year of its existence and has successfully lent more than $2 billion. As an international student from India with a passion for financial and real estate markets, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Raghunathan to all of you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And we are fortunate enough to have a moderator with us as well. And Rishi, I'm going to let you do the introduction there.
Hi, everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce Shafi. I mean, she's an incredible Berkeley change maker. So I guess as for a bit of insight into her background, she was born in New York City, but grew up actually in Tel Aviv throughout grade school and high school. Loved literature and time spent on the beach. But I guess it was her interest in applied mathematics that drew her to Carnegie Mellon University, where she graduated with a bachelor's in 1979. She continued sharing her passion for academia and completed her master's and PhD in computer science at UC Berkeley, while she's supervised by Berkeley faculty member and computer scientist Manuel Bloom. She completed her postdoc fellowship at MIT and soon after joined the university as faculty. And since 1997, Shafi has been the RSA professor of electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. But I guess apart from teaching, much of her research is actually within cryptography, and she's regarded as one of the world's leading experts in the subject. And so cryptography is the study of privacy and correctness of computation and data. And her research aims to find definitions and proofs of security. And throughout her career, she has made major contributions to cryptography, computational complexity, number theory, and probabilistic algorithms. And she was awarded the 2012 Turing Award along with Silvio Macaulay. And she's one of only 3 women to have won this prestigious award, which is widely considered as a Nobel Prize of computing. And since 2016, Shafi has been the chief scientist and the co-founder of Duality Technologies, a US-based startup that offers secure data analytics using advanced cryptographic techniques. She's also a scientific advisor for several technology startups and has helped specialize in sort of zero-knowledge blockchain, as well as another pure proof-of-stake blockchain. Her research has really helped create the theoretical foundations for zero-knowledge proofs and finding new applications for privacy-oriented technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Also, she's really heavily involved with UC Berkeley, and she's currently the director of the Science Institute for the Theory of Computing. And she's also a professor of electrical engineering and computer science. And so finally, she also actually earned I believe was a honorary doctorate at the University of Oxford. And so just really excited to kind of hear your perspectives and really love to kind of welcome you to the Richard Noon series.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. And I just put, just as you all start, I have both of your pictures there from how you are now, Shafi. So I'll let you all, let you kind of take it away. And I just wanted to mention that in the background, we're fortunate to have someone who I think brought both of you together, who you have in common, Dick Karp.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Do I take it from here?
You take it from here.
Okay, so thank you for that generous introduction, but really our guest of honor today is Arvind, who, I think is an amazing storyteller, in addition to the fact that he has an amazing story to tell. And I see Dick there too. So Dick, I think it is kind of amazing that you're here with us, because for me, you were a fundamental figure in my entire career, and certainly when I arrived at Berkeley. And I guess, Arvind, so turning to you, because you are our our centerpiece here. I just want to ask you sort of about the beginning. I understand that you grew up in Chennai, in India.
Yep.
And that's where you got your undergraduate degree. So since we have only an hour and a half, maybe we get started, and maybe you could tell us a little bit what made you decide to want to go into computer science, and specifically to get to Berkeley.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank the person who introduced me as well for the very, very generous introduction. And thank you, Shafi, for being here. And thank you, Dick, for being here. Just as Shafi said, you have truly, truly been an inspirational figure in my life. And I think there are a number of people from my firm who are on this call today, who've been working with me for 20 plus years, who heard about you for all these years and have been wondering, who is this Dick Karp? And they get to see you now. So that's great. It's very exciting for me to be with two of these amazing Turing Award winners. How did it all happen? Well, my undergraduate was in engineering. Most kids growing up in India back then were either going to be in engineering or computer science, or become doctors or whatever, right? I mean, that's all that really you could do. Everything was sort of STEM, quantitative. And I went into engineering because IIT Madras at that time didn't really have a degree in computer science. And the way it worked back then was you had to get a certain type of rank or whatever and get to choose what you wanted to study based on that. And there was no computer science, so I couldn't choose it. So I studied engineering, electrical engineering, which honestly I found to be very precise, very developed, very, very well understood subject. And I was very good at it, because actually I was very good at algebra, and I was very good at calculus. And I was very good at it, and that's exactly what you needed for electrical engineering. I was very good at it. However, I started programming computers, and I found it was very addicting. And it was also, to me, at least at that time, it seemed very ad hoc. And I really didn't have the background at that time. There was no exposure at IIT, right? So I applied to Berkeley, and I knew just enough to kind of cause some trouble for myself, really. And Clark Thompson, I don't know if any of you recalls Clark Thompson, but I think Dick does. Clark was assistant professor of computer science then, and he was in VLSI. And he saw my engineering background, and he said, why don't you come work for me as a research assistant? And I was very, very happy to work for him. And I just started out, and he gave me a problem to solve, and it was right up my alley. It was all the kinds of algebra and the transformations I had studied, the Fourier and the Laplace transforms. So I solved it right away, and I was very excited. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I really wanted to get into algorithms. So that was the big move.
And you went to, and your PhD advisor was Jean Lawler, is that right?
That's right. So actually, when Clark Thompson left, and I had this research assistantship with Clark, and so was Prabhakar Raghavan, by the way, we both worked for Clark Thompson. So when he left, he handed the funds that he had with Jean Lawler. So it just was so convenient for me. I didn't want to look for funds. I said, that's what I want to do.
And so you said you wanted to study algorithms. So what was the PhD about? I mean, and I know that you soon after you went to academia. So what was your research area at that point?
Right. So I was very ambitious, right? I was 20, just like you were, I believe, when you got into Berkeley. I was only 20, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I was sort of intoxicated by what I could possibly do and everything. And Berkeley was that kind of place where there were just possibilities were endless. And in general, when I arrived, I thought, everybody there seemed much smarter than me, and I felt like an imposter for a while, right? I just didn't. Could I really keep up? But after a while, I started feeling I could. So then I chose a problem, and that essentially was completely out of my league, but was very, very ambitious, and it was called submodular functions. And I don't know if you're if you're all familiar with it, or does it even exist anymore. But the idea, the big idea was there are all these other combinatorial optimization problems, matching or flows and min cuts and all. And there's a more general solution. And could I find that big theory, that sort of unifying theory? And I tried it. I said, I'm going to try it. And actually, my qualifiers was on that. And we had Dick Karp and your advisor, Manuel Blum, and Gene Lawler, and one other person. And somehow they accepted it. And I said, go ahead and do it. Because I didn't know what I was doing, really. And then suddenly I realized I think I could spend the next 10, 15 years doing this and still not graduate, and I'm going to be poor as can be. So that's when I said, I better do something. And I was very, very good at certain things like graph theory. I don't know, whatever. Some things came naturally for me, some things didn't. And graph theory I was pretty good at. So I actually seized upon this whole idea of how to cover polygons. And the idea really was you create some kind of a visibility graph and you use combinatorial algorithms from graph theory to solve problems in geometry that seemingly were unconnected. And I came up with a whole theory of how perfect graphs could be used to cover polygons and so on. And I managed to solve that. Literally, I solved all of those problems in maybe 6 months. But I struggled for years to do the submodular functions, So, Paul, I don't know. It's just you have to pick and choose your battles.
It's so interesting. As you're telling your story, it's like I have so many meeting points with you. First of all, of course, arriving to Berkeley and arriving fairly young, but also even the description of this committee of yours in the qualifying exam with Gene and Dick Karp and Manuel Blum. I remember that my first talk in front of these guys, and they tore me apart. And they gave me lots of comments, and I kept on saying, yes, you're right, and I thought this is the usual thing. And afterwards, I think it was Dick who maybe said, you are so, I've never seen somebody so receptive to criticism. And Gene was like, you said the colors in my talk. He said, too many colors. But he was like, we were just so, it sounds like you too, so thirsty to hear their input, because they were so inspiring, they were so wise. And now I understand they're half my age right now. But at the time.
Right. It's so true. It's so true that, for me, actually, my story of arrival is I arrived at the age of 20, right? I was picked up at the airport by Prabhakar Raghavan, who was also from IIT Madras, Berkeley PhD, went on to do amazing things in algorithms, is now a big shot at Google. He picked me up, and it was on a Saturday night. We drove through Telegraph Avenue and he picked me up on the way to his apartment, and a Grateful Dead concert had just let off, and all the Deadheads were everywhere on Telegraph Avenue. And I really don't want to get into more descriptive stuff of what happened on Telegraph Avenue, but for this kid coming from India, it was an utter state of shock to see how Berkeley was and what I had let myself into. And then I was led into the culture of Berkeley. The thing he did before he went home, as he picked me up, he went to the office, he said, just sit here for a while, and he started doing stuff. And I was like, it's Saturday night, I mean, who would do that? And then I realized that's the culture of how dedicated one is. And to me, more than anybody else, the person who taught me a lot of this is Dick Karp. I took a lot of classes with him. He taught me how to think, taught me how to be professional. I think the way to conduct yourself in professional life for me comes from Dick Karp, because I always saw him. It was always so proper and dig deep and don't be superficial and figure things out before you open your mouth and say something, And I've lived like that now for the past 37 years since, those days. And I think the people in my office who are on this call now will tell you exactly that's how I am. So it's you learn a lot at Berkeley, and with all the people like Dick and Manuel and Gene, I mean, they were towering figures.
Absolutely. I also feel that my time at Berkeley was really the most creative and sort of amazing time of my life, which is part of the reason why I chose to come back here as a director. So, but I also was attached to what you were saying, that you went into graph theory because that appealed to you. And that's not something that's being taught. There's some natural inclination to one kind of field or another. And I think that there's something not to fight, but actually to follow.
That's right.
you know, since we are talking to undergraduates, so who are also maybe embarking on a graduate career, these are important things to know. But let's go on to, so then you went and you decided to be a professor, right? You went to Courant, or you went
That's
to
right. I got into as a professor at Courant, and yeah, it was an amazing place. You know, I met a lot of great people. I was working, doing research with two people, some of whom I think you may know. Zvi Kedem is one of them, with whom I wrote a few papers, and then I wrote one with Richard Cole, who's also you know, well-known theoretician, and it was good. Courant was a very lively place. It wasn't like being at Berkeley. You know, it was in New York City. The activity around you was intense. It's very different, and I fell in love with New York City more than anything else. I just absolutely fell in love with New York City, and at Courant was actually a very interesting time for me, because actually I met a person through a Berkeley connection, actually Tandy Warnow, who you may or may not know, introduced me to the person who became my friend and now is my wife when I was at Courant. And I also at that time discovered Wall Street, finance. I knew nothing about it. I literally did not know what a stock or a bond was when I got here to Courant. And but New York was full of, you know, professionals in these things, and you met them at drinks or dinner, and they spoke. And I was always wondering, what is that? And so I have a story on that as well, but I'll let you guide me.
So what's the story?
Well, the story sort of is that it was at Courant actually, and I had a little office, right? And there was some construction going on in my office. So they said, why don't you go occupy the larger office? It belonged to Martin Davis, who was the chair of my department. He was a well-known logician. He was away or traveling or whatever. And Martin had this beautiful sofa and an amazing library in his office. So here I was, I shut the door. I said, I'm going to work on something. I browsed through his bookshelf. And the one book that caught my eye was a book called Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis. I don't know, Michael Lewis is roughly in your area somewhere, but
He
Michael
lives up the
Lewis,
street from me, yeah.
no. For the students who don't know, Michael Lewis wrote a very famous book called Moneyball that was made into a movie. It's about the Oakland A's and how they choose how to organize their games and so on and so forth using mathematics. Michael Lewis wrote his first book called Liar's Poker. It's a classic. It's a classic about life at a company called Salomon Brothers, which was at that time probably the top Wall Street firm, along with Goldman Sachs, and how the traders were and their culture. And it's a fascinating little book. And that afternoon, I lay in Martin Davis' beautiful sofa and I read the book cover to cover. And it was sort of a wake-up call for me. I suddenly sort of got this bug in me to, should I even think of going to Wall Street or to be in the finance profession, you know? So all of that happened in my days at Courant.
So can you explain the name? Why in a sentence? Why Liar's Poker?
Why Liar's Poker? Liar's Poker talks about the culture of Wall Street firms, but also about how money was being made in immense ways by a handful of people at Salomon Brothers, led by a very famous trader called John Merriweather. He built a small group of people who were PhDs and considered very, very smart quants that he hired from Harvard and various other well-known places. He brought them to Salomon Brothers, which had this culture of a free-swinging trading firm. And by the way, that was my experience when I got into Wall Street as well. It was really, really indisciplined people who were full, very macho and very testosterone-oriented culture. But he brought the small group of people and he was making a lot of money. So when I read that, for me, the first thought was, you know, here I am in computer science. You have all these amazing luminaries, people doing incredibly smart stuff. And while I was doing good things, would I ever shine the way they were? You know,
Probably.
I don't know. That's alternate history at this point, but I thought, I don't know. The kind of stuff I was doing with Kedem and all of that was very good, but I didn't think it was going to be path-breaking. But to me, when I saw that, it was an opportunity to do something path-breaking, which is, here's this place where there was no quantitative stuff, And if you were just to bring it in there, and I thought I was pretty good at it, could I do something great? So I went home that day. I met my friend, who's today my wife, and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to quit academia and I want to do this. And she didn't say, are you crazy? She actually said, you know what? I think you'll be good at this. You seem to love it. You have so much passion for it. But at the same time, you have a lot of things that I don't see in many academics. You are much more broad based on what you do. You have more of a people getting along with people culture to you. Maybe you'll do well. You should try it out. So I took a sabbatical when I was eligible, and I went to work at this company called First Boston, which is today Credit Suisse. And First Boston was one of the top firms back then. But the culture was shocking for me. It was just simply shocking. And even though, the people who hired me were nice to me, the rest of the culture was completely seemed like a band of people who were very macho, uneducated, frat house, animal farm kind of a feel to the whole place. And I was really, have I made a mistake? And people used to refer to me as that programmer. So I used to sit in a corner trying to build systems for what I want to do. And it was sort of a derogatory thing of, here are all the smart traders and here's that programmer. So it was the stigma that, ultimately I didn't care. But the point was, that's the culture I got into.
Very interesting. So, when you describe the decision to switch, it's sort of a mixed decision. On one hand, it's because you're excited about this new thing. And at the same time, it's like, well, I don't think I'm going to change the world in the other. So it's a mixture of positive and negative vibes, but all of it is very, very, very ambitious, right? So you wanted to be the best, and this was a way to do it.
I think that you put the finger on it, right? I mean, I wanted to be the best at something, and you sort of have to pivot all the time in life. I'm just talking to the young students out there. You often don't know what your calling in life is. You're in something because of happenstance, you got into it because your parents asked you to or something. But you have to find your calling. You have to find your passion. You have to find the thing that motivates you the most, because the two most important things, life is long and it takes a lot of energy to do well in anything, right? It takes a lot of energy. And the two most important things are you have to have passion or motivation to do it, without which sooner or later you burn out. And the second is you have to have optimism that you can get things done, or else why would you keep struggling to do anything, right? So to the young kids out there, I would just say, it takes time to find your calling. It's no big deal if you haven't found it yet. Keep looking, but find something that truly motivates you and stay optimistic throughout, or else it's very elusive to get to where you need to be. And I'm sure you have a lot of stories to tell us, Shafi, because you did win the Turing Award, so it's not easy to do without these two things, I imagine.
So, but back to your story. So you went to, you are, John Belushi, Animal Farm, people. You are in, this is First of Boston. Is that the first place you went?
It's a First Boston was a private partnership. Actually, it's written in, if you read Michael Lewis's book, he talks about how First Boston is one of the top 3 or 4 firms that are going to survive, along with Salomon Brothers, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and First Boston are the 4 he picks. And a lot of great people came out of First Boston, but eventually it was merged into Credit Suisse.
So you went to Credit Suisse directly?
No, I went into First Boston. It was First Boston for a number of years, and then eventually it merged into Credit Suisse, and I was there at that time as well.
So was their atmosphere more?
No, you know what? I think what happened is, over the course of the next 30 years after I got there, the culture changed one step at a time. And today the cultures in these firms are quite different than when I got in. It's still superficial in the sense that long term is, what shall we do for lunch? I mean, that's a cliche about Wall Street, right? No one thinks longer term than what shall we do for lunch. But I think it's gotten much more intellectual. People are more thoughtful, there are more systems. People really think about risk in a more constructive way, in which you should. But back then, there was no notion of these things. It was literally the guy who spoke the loudest was considered the best trader. I mean, it was that sort of a very, very, very ill thought out situation. But it slowly changed, even as I was there.
So you're saying that they used to call you the programmer to begin with, which was sort of an insult. But right now, the way that I see it, analytics and programs that make decisions in the stock market seem to rule the day. So
Right.
that has changed quite a bit. I assume that they're hiring more and more people.
A lot. That's so true. It was really a time of change there as well, which is, either they used to call us the programmer and my group, the programmers, or they used to call us the green card group. That's the other name that they had, which was, because most of the guys were from all these foreign countries who were quantitative and so on and so forth. So it was a very different culture. But today, yeah, I think, look, I think some of the biggest successes on Wall Street in finance, really, in terms of trading skills, have been quantitative people such as Jim Simons himself, who funded the Simons Institute, and there have been a number of others who have really capitalized on the inefficiencies in the market caused by people who are doing this type of stuff without proper processes, and that's really all we did.
It's funny what you say about the green card, because unrelated, when I interviewed at NYU, and I remember Martin Davis telling me that the only people who take their offer are foreigners and people who are born in New York. I was considered both because I was born in New York and I was a foreigner as well, growing up in Israel most of my life. So in any case, so then you decided at some point after Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank, many years, I guess, till like 2009, to go out on your own. What happened there?
Well, first of all, I wanted to tell students what sort of trading I did, right? It was quantitative, but the idea really is to capitalize on sort of human frailties and human nature, which is really 100% due to evolution, sort of says that people react in certain ways. And why do they? Because that's how we evolved in terms of being hunter-gatherers, following a leader, going from one place to another, and then ultimately the more reluctant ones who are hesitant follow, and then it's time to move from there because the other place gets crowded and so on. This whole phenomenon happens in the market, and when people follow the leader, that's considered what you think of as momentum, and when people sort of finally realize it's getting too crowded and need to get out, that becomes sort of mean reversion. That's exactly what happens in the market. That's one of the big things. And the second aspect of it is what I think of as the power of bad, which is typically human beings through evolution, again, because you need to protect the downside in order to not die from, when you're hanging from a tree or whatever, you need to protect yourself from a snake, and you don't want to think about the positives of being in the tree and having a nice sleep. Same idea, really, that the power of bad is to exaggerate the bad side, and typically psychologists find this by a factor of 4 for every good thing, equal good thing. So when bad things happen, people do the most irrational things, and if you can find mathematical ways to detect both the momentum, the mean reversion, as well as people really exiting positions that are economically or completely uneconomic and irrational to do, you can benefit from those things in the markets, the financial markets. So I did this. I built a team. I had very smart, many of whom still work for me. And we had, I will say, an enormous run at these two banks. We made, had a very, I don't want to get into the numbers, but very, very, very successful runs. And then 2008 came, which was, for some of the students may not fully know this, but it was a collapse of the economic system entirely due to all the leverage in the housing market, et cetera, et cetera. And all these banks were really limping and unable to really function, whereas I had had an excellent year in 2008. And I felt like the banks had been wounded, but at the same time, I felt very confident I could do it on my own. So it seemed like the right time to take my team and leave. And we launched our own fund to do exactly the same thing, trading stocks and bonds and futures and commodities and everything using quantitative models. And we left to do that. And at that year, when we left, we were the largest launch of that year. We launched with more than $1 billion at that time. For launches usually are much smaller, but we had a very successful launch, and that was the motivation, really. And to make a long story short at this point, really, for various reasons that in retrospect I know what they are, but at that time I didn't really quite know what they were. We struggled, and we basically had a couple of good years, and then in 2011 to 13 we couldn't really make money for the life of us. And again, I just want the students to know, we launch what is called a fund. A fund is typically when a lot of investors give you money, you pool it, you manage it, and you make them more money. And if you make them more money, you get paid handsomely for it. That's what a fund is. And that's what we tried to do, but we couldn't make money, 2011 to 13. And it was one of the most humbling experience of my life, no doubt. It was startling to me that such a thing should be happening. But, there were actual reasons for it, including, macro changes. The Federal Reserve was printing money. Our models had not caught up to that. The internet had made the amount of information available very, very, very democratic way in which people could get the sort of information that we were able to get as professionals. And there were other reasons that, one can think of as luck, but it's really not. It's just, two seemingly random events happening in a certain way that seemed sort of not appropriate or optimal for us. But I could not, and it was a very, very, very humbling experience, the most difficult period of my life. And I will admit freely that at that time, I had no solutions for what was happening, didn't know how to figure it out. I also, by the way, and I'm sure you will be able to relate to it, I had not up to that point failed at anything, right? Maybe I did badly in an exam or something like that, but I'd never, almost anything I did really up to that point, I'd been pretty successful. And I didn't really understand failure. And I wasn't sure it was happening to me. I thought it's going to turn around, but it didn't for 3 years. And it was a very, very hard period for us, especially for me. And then in 2013, I took the decision to shut the fund and return capital to our investors. So it's still with us, and nobody had really lost money, but nobody made any money. So we shut the fund. And, at this time, I really must say I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm fortunate in the sense that, I had the support and the love of my family, my friends, and my team. Oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, they didn't abandon me. My best people stayed with me through all of this. And we used to go into an office with nothing to do except to figure out what are we going to do next. That was the whole, conversations. We thought about everything. And I was probably not the most energetic or optimistic at that time, but my friends, family, and my teammates were optimistic, and they said, let's figure something out. So that was the next step.
So the team culture that you had in your team was very, very different than the team culture in these banks that you were describing earlier. So
That's right.
Seems like it was like a bandit of friends rather than each one on their own and screaming the loudest.
That's so true, because we handpicked these people, and I've always believed a lot in teams, and I really think the power of teams, the power of working together, is simply something that cannot be underestimated. You really need people of many different talents who are all motivated, who are all optimistic, who are all able to get along with each other, but different skill sets. It's very important. And my job is to pick them, and my job is to motivate them. That's what I think I ended up doing. And I think in that one thing, at least, I was good over that period. And maybe even eventually I've been pretty good at that. But getting the team to work together it's magical when that happens. And I will say, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that that you were good at it. It's very clear. You even said it in the beginning that when you made your decision to go into finance, one of the characteristics was that you knew that you were good at working with people.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And in that regard, maybe as you're a professor, you have a lot of students, and obviously it's so enriching to educate students and get the best out of them. And our professors got the best out of us. So I know that that's an amazing thing to do. And I always felt that my job in these places was to hire incredibly smart, talented people. Most of them were junior to me, younger than me, and to get the best out of them. And actually, I benefited as much or more than they did. So it was actually made a lot of sense for me to mentor them and to keep them excited, focused, and all of that, and to provide them that umbrella of security by which they could say we can do a lot of things. So I think that's a critical part of my growth and what I benefited from.
So then you switched and you managed to make from failure to success. So can you tell us about this last transition?
Yes, and it's really it's very exciting. So what happened was we clearly, I wasn't sure I'd ever be employed anywhere, right? I mean, I was too senior and nobody would want to employ a person like that. And so I knew I had to do it on my own. And I had the team and everything, but what do we do? I mean, that was the question. We debated a lot, but the one thing we sort of thought about was there was so much technology and smart people and ideas in the world of security, whether it's stock or a bond or futures, commodities, and so on. So it became much harder to do anything there. But if you looked at real estate, there was very little of that. Real estate is still very old world, highly illiquid. The process is terrible. If you want to buy a house or sell a house, it's really a very uncomfortable process for people. And there was really no automation. It's a 20th century technology to get title done. I mean, there's no central register. There's no way to check these things. It's all paper. So we thought maybe there's something we could do there. And, I'd be lying if I said I had the grand theory of what I wanted to do right then. We just knew we wanted to go there and do something. And so we started a company that would get into real estate finance. And, this time around, as I said earlier, luck was, or whatever you want to call it, the way events happened weren't favorable back then. This time, the way events happened were also very favorable for us. So the combination of getting into real estate, a market that didn't have a lot of this stuff, keeping the team together, we still understood finance, we understood technology, we understood data science, we understood people, we knew all of that, and we had a reputation, so we could raise money very easily if required. All of that combined with a series of fortunate events made us very successful. So we actually grew and we doubled volumes every year. And it's been, an incredible ride. And COVID really has been, it's been terrible for so many people. And I really feel for all of them, restaurant workers, NTA workers, hairdressers, and so on. It's just been out of work. It's been terrible. But for us, it was an incredibly positive event because people want to be in bigger houses. People want to remodel their homes. People want a second home, all kinds of stuff, which has really made our business very, very good. So this has been a very different period for us. But, I think, my message really to younger people is, you have to, again, find things that you're motivated by. You have to always be optimistic. You have to be persistent or have grit, really. So I don't know if grit is the right word, but you have to be, because there's a lot of bad stuff that everybody has bad periods. Everybody has good periods. Everybody has bad periods. But during the bad period, how do you react? How do you give up, or how do you look at the world? And as I said, earlier, I had all these unfortunate events that seem to happen. I mean, of course, it's not luck. It's just how it turned out. But in my current incarnation, a lot of things seem to go right. It was one thing after another. It was a very series of fortunate events. So, those of us who think about it that way, you say, excuse me, events in life happen through a bell curve. Just because you got a bunch of stuff from the left tail doesn't mean anything. It's a matter of time before stuff happens on the right tail. So we did what we could. And one other thing I'd like to add to this is, apart from all these other things, I'd like to add that you need to be confident as well. You have to have confidence in yourself and your team as well. And that's a very critical part of success. And I think in my case, while I lost confidence in those 3 years, the 2011 to 13 period, I literally lost all confidence. But I always would tell myself of what I had accomplished before. I would tell myself, I could actually, even in the days when I was a computer scientist, I could work with people who were, extremely successful. And I think I once mentioned to you, I wrote papers with Knut and with Rabin and so on. I could work with them as somewhat of an equal, right? So I felt I had something in me. When I became a trader and I started doing quantitative trading, I could hang with the best. I could do it. So I felt this, I was going through a period which was very difficult, but I had a sense of confidence that if I just were to apply myself again, I felt I could, get there. So you don't have to have gone through all the things I did, but I think the ingredients, the way I think about it is motivation or passion, optimism, confidence, resilience, or persistence. Those are the four I throw out. Then, of course, teamwork, which is critical. Without the team, I could not have done. By the way, my teammates are all here. I will say to them, without you guys, I would not have been able to do it.
I have so many questions for you, but I think the audience does too. Still, I'm going to ask a couple more questions.
Oh.
So what did your parents do? Because you said you never heard of a stock, computer science wasn't, what did they do?
My mother was a homemaker. She wanted to be a doctor. She was the first in her school and in her university, but her father wanted her to get married, and this is India 1950. So so she just got married, and I think she could have been an excellent doctor, but she got married and she had me, and she just took care of me. My father was an engineer, as all or many Indian men of that era were all engineers. He worked in engineering for a number of years, and then he, like me, left and he started his own company. And he was a businessman, really, for the rest of his life, running a small sort of chemicals-oriented business.
And then another question, which I'm sure the kids are sort of not question, but thought. You're saying the COVID-19 this year was sort of the year that your company did well. And I know that for a lot of young people, and I think you just lost my picture. Okay, we'll go to the phone. So for a lot of no, now you have two of me. Never mind.
Maybe Victoria can put you on the main screen, the phone. Oh yeah, we can see you now. You're moving now. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that one of the, COVID-19 has been a difficult year, obviously for some people, a tragic year for some people, difficult year. For your company, it was a profitable year. And I know that for a lot of the students, at least knowing from my own kids, it's sort of like this year came out of nowhere. And if you're an undergraduate, there goes a year and a half of your undergraduate experience. It's not what you expected. And it's like, oh my God, I've been screwed, whatever. But it's not necessarily the case, or it's not the only way to look at it. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, I feel it very much for you. I have a number of friends. My own daughters, by the way, luckily had graduated college by then, so they didn't have to go through this terrible period, although they were home with us and all of that, and not really having the right type of, at that age, at the age of 24, they should have been out there doing more things, but they weren't. But I really feel for the kids who really lost out on that college experience. I mean, it's not just the instruction, it's more than that. It's just meeting each other, socializing, making bonds, even the sorts of things we are doing right now. If we didn't have all these bonds going back 30 or 40 years, it'll be very difficult. But for them, you're not making these bonds, so it's very, very, very hard. But all I can really say to them is, sometimes in life, a few doors close, and if you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, that door closed, and that's terrible, what do I do? But then there are other doors that open. And clearly COVID, as somebody said, when COVID came in, it changed a whole bunch of things. And when COVID is going to go away, again, it's going to change a whole bunch of things. So you have to watch out now for opportunities that are going to be there for you as COVID goes away. Excuse me, just like when COVID came in, it messed things up, and COVID goes away, it's going to create opportunities. And so keep your eyes and ears open for these. They are going to be there. I'm absolutely confident. I'm 100% long the United States of America's economy and the country as a whole. There's going to be plenty of opportunity, and you just have to be adapt to it. You have to be on your toes. You have to be thinking about what can open up for you as a possibility. And ultimately, in life, when an opportunity drops on your lap, there are some people who know what to do with it, and there's some people who just don't know what to do with it anyway. So sometimes we just have to be very nimble and have this opportunity and run with it and create something from it. And that's really the only message for them is, please don't get too down on yourself, because every event of all kinds, I mean, even when, the asteroid hit Earth, it destroyed so much life, but that reason for mammals coming up the way for humans coming is really the asteroid dropping, or else the dinosaurs would have been eating us. So there's opportunity everywhere.
Thank you. What a fantastic story. All these changes and why they came about, a lot of serendipity, but also thought, and incredible, fascinating. I really think you should do, one of my hobbies is I do playback theater,
No.
which is improv and telling stories. You would be a fantastic member of our troupe, I've got to tell you.
Thank you for saying that. I'd be more than happy to join.
It's true. I think it's time for some questions from the audience. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yeah, it would be great. But before we go to those questions, there is a slide I do want to share.
Okay.
I thought the students would really like seeing how amazingly similar actually you all still look. And, and
Yeah,
maybe as that slide is up, Rishi, I don't know if you want to bring Arjit in to ask a question that could be kind of interesting while this slide is up. Or maybe not quite yet, but I am wondering if you all could talk to your 20-year-old selves. I don't even know the story behind these two pictures, but I'm curious if you could tell us the story of the picture and then what you might have told your 20-year-old self.
Who wants to go first?
You, Arvind.
Okay. What would I say to the 20-year-old self here? I would say, dude, get a better haircut. That's the first thing I would say. I think look, I think I was a Berkeley guy. I thought of myself as very intellectual. I still do. I love reading books, but I used to read a lot of books. I used to go to the cafes. I used to do math, but I also had lots of discussions about everything, the financial system, politics, and everything. I loved it. And I would just say to myself, if I could go back, I'd say, don't waste time. Don't waste time is the biggest thing I would say to myself. Seize opportunities, take risks in your life, and I would say think long term. Please don't think short term. Things like grades or awards or fame or power or even money are ultimately the wrong reasons to get things done or work. Instead, think long term, go after something that is really, really, really meaningful to you. And I think all the other stuff will follow if you get this right. That's what I would say.
So it's my turn.
Fantastic. Yeah, Shafi.
So analogous to the haircut remark, I guess I would say to myself that you should have used more suntan lotion. But in any case, and also about the not to waste time, I would say to myself, you wasted so much time doubting yourself. What a waste of time. Because all that doubt, as you age, less and less of it. And would have been so much simpler and save so much time to just put these thoughts and emotions aside if one can. And another thing I guess that I would tell my 20-year-old, it's more of a personal thing. I don't know if it would speak to anyone, is give yourself some time. So if you want to understand something, don't rush, take your time to understand it. It's not like rushing to the next opportunity, which I think I have a little bit of a tendency to do. There's such great pleasure in understanding something deeply. I think that's true as an academic, but I don't think it's only true as an academic. I think it's even true later in any kind of profession, maybe even in personal life. Try to understand rather than be so goal-oriented. More focus on kind of understanding that could get you further than you realize.
That's great. I'm going to slowly bring some students in, but Harjit, I'm having a hard time pinning you or getting you on the spotlight, but I think you're unmuted. Go ahead, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would love to be a student, but Arvind's very familiar with me already. He is my CEO. I'll make it quick. Arvind, just a reflection of your professional path. Would you have thought to take in any other path? Being a medical doctor, a fireman? What's your thoughts on that? And then secondly, when are you releasing or publishing your biography?
Well, I think the biography, well, you know, a forum like this actually creates a lot of new thoughts. So actually, if I could get a transcript of this, maybe it's a good starting point to write a book, to be honest, and or maybe through Shafi's improv is another way to explore these things. It is fun to explore these things. In terms of my life calling, you know, I really think there's a lot. I mean, you know, we're talking to the queen of randomness here, but really, I think there is so much randomness in all of this. There is just so much randomness. Things happen for all kinds of, and there are lots of different sort of seemingly random processes, and one happens before the other or just after the other. It alters the course of, but there is no alternate history, right? That's the critical thing for me. There is no alternate history. I cannot even imagine what else I would have ever been except this.
And the next one is Peter here.
Yep.
Hello there. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
It's you.
Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. I'm really curious to hear on your perspectives on the possibilities or like the responsibilities the finance industry has in battling climate change.
Okay, that is a great question. I think, you know, it's very interesting how certain things happen, right? I think, you know, they talk about it as ESG right now, environmental, social, and governance is ESG. And it's really sort of a catch-all phrase or word that's being thrown around. But I'm telling you, what I find most interesting that's happening on walls in finance right now is that people are actually taking the ball away from our hands, more or less, right? The investors, the world, the community is taking the ball away. It doesn't matter how we think about it. If we are not responsible in how we go about investing through ESG to really make a difference, ultimately we won't get money from investors to invest. It's just how it's going to happen, because it's a tidal wave right now. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Anywhere and everywhere I turn, people are thinking and talking about it. And the moment you come across as a person who's not responsible, and due to your actions, whether it's financial or otherwise, you're not responsible, people stop doing business with you. And I think it's going to happen in a democratic manner altogether without the financial industry themselves regulating. It's going to be forced upon us. And I think that's happening as we speak today, but in a couple of years, it's going to be a tidal wave. So those of you who are thinking about what you want to do, you really want to think about how to take advantage of this tidal wave that's coming in terms of how money is going to move away from traditional things into anything that has to do with ESG.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Next.
hard questions. I think Martha, you're up next.
Hi, thank you. This is a more specific question, but what do you remember was, if any, a difficult or memorable aspect on a personal level of job searching after you graduated from UC Berkeley?
Well, you know, I applied only for academic jobs at that time, right? Because I got my PhD, I didn't really think about going to almost anything else. Actually, it's interesting. I graduated in 1988, but I applied a year early for whatever reason. I thought I was going to graduate early, and I applied, and I was I was rejected by 100% of the people I applied to. Not a single person would talk to me that year. So they wouldn't even talk to me. I mean, I remember meeting people saying I'm about to graduate and this is my dissertation and all that. Actually, I'd written a number of papers in all the so-called top conferences, but they still didn't want to talk to me that year. And I felt very rejected, you know. So I went back to the drawing board and I really thought about what I wanted to do. And I think I was helped by the advice of Dick Carr, amongst others. And I tried again the next year. And, you know, I sort of, to be honest, I wanted to be in a place like New York City. I just wanted, I don't know, I really craved that sort of urban life. And I was very fortunate that I got a job at the 2 universities in New York that I applied to that year. So again, going back to this, you know, did I feel defeated the first year? Yes, I did, but I wasn't ready. You know what I mean? It wasn't that, it was sort of irresponsible on my part probably to have thought about it. But the next year, actually, I did land. So sometimes it's just, you know, you have to give it a little bit of time and keep trying, and good things do happen. But you have to maintain your attitude through all of this is the critical thing for me. If you change your behavior, then your outcomes are going to change.
Thank you. That's actually very comforting because I am in a similar situation where I have been prematurely applying and prematurely being rejected. So thank you for that experience.
I think things will turn around in a year.
Thank you.
And also sometimes it's not really that you're prematurely applying, it's just that the world has changed and it's not the right time. I know people who are now full professors at Harvard, were full professors at MIT, and when they went out on the market, they only got one, you know, small job in a company. Nobody wanted to interview them because it was the wrong year and it was the wrong place.
I see. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha. Yindeng.
Yeah. So first of all, Arvind and Shafi, thank you so much for spending your time giving this talk today, and I've definitely learned a lot from you guys. So I have a question about like working for the right causes that you guys just mentioned, because I'm a 3rd year like studying CS at UC Berkeley, and I'll probably be graduating like next year. And I think a common path for CS majors at Berkeley is to, we graduate, we just work in the Silicon Valley as software engineer or something like that for the rest of our lives. But I mean, as for the right cause, I'm kind of lost on that because I've actually, in the past few weeks, I've thought a lot about what's the long-term goal for myself. Like, is it money or is it something else? Like, because you mentioned that we want to work for the right cause, and money and the fame are not one of those right causes. So could you guys just elaborate how you guys found your right causes?
It's not so much as a cause, in my opinion, as I think unless you're really excited by something, I think it's a matter of time before it sort of burns out. That's what I was trying to say. And really, you know, look, I think going to Silicon Valley and getting a job in one of those companies is also quite exciting, right? It's not like it's not. Lots of these guys are doing pretty interesting and pretty amazing things. But all I was trying to say, you have to find something in the long run at any rate. Short run, we all take different jobs, it's not a big deal. But in the long run, if you're not doing something that you find truly exciting, I just think it's a matter of time before it sort of fizzles out for you. That's all I was trying to say. So I think the right thing for you to do probably is to go to Silicon Valley, get a job, earn good money, learn more about things, and then really look for your life's calling, which is going to take a little bit longer. You're just a sophomore or a junior right now, right? So it's kind of difficult for you to know everything. I mean, I knew nothing back in my days at IIT in India. I had no idea. And, you know, so it takes a little bit of time, and you're still young. So you just need to explore more, read more books, talk to more people, find a mentor. I'm big into the mentoring system, by the way. I think UC Berkeley needs to have a mentoring system. And I think the United States of America has to have a mentoring system, frankly. If I had my say with President Biden, I would say the number one thing to do is to create a national mentoring system for young people so that everybody sort of has a little bit of a pyramid and go up a pyramid where, you know, you always get some mentoring. And I think it's so important for young people to be mentored because you just don't know. I didn't know a thing when I was young. I didn't know a thing. And I had no mentors back in IIT or no one to tell me, you know. So what I think you need to do is to find a job, have good income, learn more, read more, talk to more people, find mentors, and then you have a life's calling. That's what I would say.
So just to add, I mean, I think it's a generational thing too. So there was a period of time where there was no question in people's minds. They just wanted to go to Silicon Valley. I mean, CS majors. I think that changed. I don't know what it's like right now, but I sort of talking for my kids and stuff. There was a period then people would just sort of maybe do that for a couple of years, 2-3 years. Then they would go to, climate change company or foundations, no profit. It's not so clear, right? That's what it used to be. And in any case, it's not a decision. It's not a forever decision. It could be a decision for a few years. And if you decide this is not satisfying for you, there are jobs out there that require computer science skills that have kind of this cause, or that might speak more to you, that clearly this is something that's bothering you, that might have more than just the particular financial package that they offer you.
I agree with Shafi.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for that question. Anton, I think that you had a good question. And really, for whatever reason, everybody seems to want you all to take a different career path. But Anton.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Yes. I was wondering, if you were graduating now, what would you choose? Would you still go into finance, into fintech? For me, this has been sort of, I've been around people who work in finance, so it was the default path to me, because a lot of my friends ended up there, even though they weren't trying to. So I was always kind of concerned that I'll end up there. I am kind of passionate about it, but it doesn't seem to. It would be almost like I would be accepting my fate. So I'm curious, if you were considering this question right now, what would you choose?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing about me is, I think many of the people on this call who know me, they know that I am a person who tries to to solve big things. I generally like to take chances, trying to solve big things. And if I think I cannot, I move on. So that's sort of been my pattern. So there are lots of big things you can do right now. The world has incredible number of big things you can solve. So, I think ESG, climate, but overall ESG is an enormously big thing, right? You can solve right now, and it's partly finance, but it's partly climate. It's a whole bunch of things. It's a very big thing, and I think for me personally, if you're asking me, I think about something big like that, like solving, for example, the housing crisis in the United States, which is what I'm trying to do right now, right? I'm trying to pivot myself from doing a housing finance, or really trying to solve the entire housing crisis in the United States. That's what I'd like to think about it at any rate. Everybody needs bigger, better homes. Everybody is living in homes that were built in the 70s and 80s. And how do we solve this? And how do we make the whole process, which is so difficult, simple for that? It's a big problem. So I would sort of define, in finance today, lots of big problems where you can do good and not just do sort of things that you think of as paper pushing, or pushing buttons or moving one piece from here to there. You can actually solve big problems. So you need to investigate it more, but I think there are many.
I just want to say something about what Victoria said, that people are trying to convince you to take another job. Actually, when you were speaking, I was thinking, that your story is, rather than the path not taken, is actually the path taken. That you actually always took you made an active choice in taking a path. So you didn't do a default. But I also want to say about finances, banks, investment firms, they have so much information, they have so much data that can be used not just to make more money, but for housing crisis, for homelessness, for many, many, many social problems, where the wealth of information exists actually in the finance industry. So I think there's so many venues. Finance is not so strictly defined as making money on the stock market,
Exactly right. 100%. There's a lot of good you can do, and solve big problems too. Make it exciting for yourself.
Thank you. Ethical investing it is done.
Fantastic. Swetha, I think that you have a question. I appreciate that, Anton. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you to both of you, Arvind and Shafi, for speaking to the class today. Arvind, my question for you is, you've had this incredible career and this incredibly demanding academic pathway to your career. And I was wondering what role your family has played in that, both your family of origin, leaving them in India and then moving to the States, which is a story that resonates with me also as a Tamilian American. but also your family now. You've mentioned your children, and I'm just curious what that has been like with your career.
Yeah. Well, family is everything, right? At least for me, family is everything. I mean, I put everything secondary to that. Actually, health and family, without that, you cannot be happy, in my opinion. So first and foremost, you need good health. And if you're constantly sick, it's very hard to be happy, but the family is everything. I mean, my parents did everything to support me and get me where I am. They were incredibly supportive of whatever I wanted to do, but they were also very keen that I was a person who was achievement oriented, and they did everything to get me educated. I got into the right university. I came to Berkeley. They were always supportive, and I really owe everything. Starting point is my parents, who did indescribable amounts for me, and I'm very, very close to my rest of my family, my wife, my kids, I have two daughters who are twins. They are 24. And I'm very close to them. I talk to them numerous times a day. And they've always been supportive of everything through ups, but more so during the down period, which is really when you need family. And it's also my friends. I'm a fairly social person. The people I'm closest to, I'm very close to them. They support me through everything. So I mean, some of us are more fortunate, some of us are less fortunate. It's impossible for me to sit here and say everybody has to take advantage of all these things. Excuse me. Some of you may unfortunately not have the familial support I've had over my course of my life. But for me, I owe all my success to them, 100%. 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of both of you being so sharing with the students. Lars, I think Lars Tatum, you had a question.
You're on mute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for your talk today. My name is Lars. I'm a PhD student at EECS. And earlier, you were talking about kind of the ethics, right, of the finance industry today. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the recent debacle with GameStop and some of these other stocks at the beginning of this year, as far as all the hedge funds and shorting goes. I was curious about your thoughts on that.
Well, I think finances take, the internet, the amount of information people have, social media, amount of sharing that people have, the amounts of things that can get people to rally and do is both good and bad. But we can see in certain cases, I don't know, in the case of certain countries with independent Arab Spring and all of that, played possibly a good role. But in lots of cases, it plays a very bad role as well. And you are able to now rally people to all kinds of things. We see what happened in the recent elections or in the prior election and so on, right? You see the power of social media is pretty incredible. And when it comes to the stock market, especially when people are trading things on leverage, recently a hedge fund blew up. It had $100 billion. I think it was on last Friday, right? It had 100, or it's a family office of a particular guy. They had 100 billion in positions supported by 10 billion in equity. When you have so much leverage, you can mess things up very badly because the smallest move wipes out the equity. So you have the situation where in social media, people say almost anything in a case where it's a heavily shorted stocks, too much leverage, etc., and mess things up. And that's exactly what happened. And so sometimes I think, do I believe social media needs to have more regulation? I 100% think so, because the power of social media is something that we haven't really fully understood. The power is immense. And this is a situation where you can roil markets and destroy, lots of people. Whether shorting is right or wrong, I'm not in a position, I'm not a moralist. I don't have any moral opinions about anything in the world. I don't believe in morality of any kind. But I'm just trying to say that when you have situations like this, you cause a lot of chaos for the economy as well. So I just think that the social media is the starting point of all of this.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, there you go. Obviously you inspired either a shot of coffee or something else. I like it. Kenza, you had a question, and then I think Urgil will have the last question. And while Urgil is asking, just so you will know, I will post a link where we get feedback. So Kenza, I'm going to ask you to ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you to both the speakers, Arvind and Shafi. And my question is that for Arvind, you had an extremely diverse career experience. Would you recommend people to explore everything they're interested in, or only focus on one particular career they're truly passionate about?
I think different sizes for different people, right? I mean, I think different strokes for different people are different, different sizes for people, or whatever you want to, what exactly is the right phrase, I don't know. But it's hard for me to say there's any one right path. There's a right path for everybody of their choosing. For me, I chose different things because I wanted to go to things where I saw there's more opportunity, or there's a problem that was interesting, big, that I could solve. I went for that. If everybody were to do that, it may not work out because it may not be suitable for their personality or for other things. Lots of people just do one thing and they stick to it, and they're very successful and they're very happy. I wasn't, so I did all these things and I really figured out for myself where I could play a role. So I'm just trying to say that I don't have an answer for you what you should do. They both could work and they both could make you happy and successful, but it's something you have to think within yourself. But all I'm trying to say is it is possible for both paths to be highly successful. That's all. It's not, don't rule anyone out saying, oh, geez, that's too difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shafi, any thoughts you want to add?
I just think that the undergraduates in this class are extremely fortunate, basically, because they are at Berkeley, because they are getting an undergraduate degree in many areas, but especially in engineering and in science. And I think it's a good time to graduate. It's a good time to study science and engineering. It's clear, if anything this pandemic has taught us is more respect around the world to science. And whatever path you take right now, it doesn't determine, the path you're going to be in 5 years. Again, I gotta say, less doubt, more action, more confidence that things will work out, and that and you can try to, I said earlier that I wish I understood things completely. I didn't really mean understand myself completely. And you can also try to operate without a complete understanding of oneself. I mean, I see only reason to be optimistic at this point in time, given the professions that you've chosen. And I think Arvind's example is fantastic, and also the way he's viewing is the story. It's a story, it's a storytelling. It has many phases. It's not it's not a death foretold or whatever, the Marcia Garcia. It's not something you knew from beginning to end,
Yep.
Yeah. It's an unfolding.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks for that question. Urgil, do you want to take us into our last question? And while Arvind is answering, I'm going to put up our quiz password.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for being here, both of you all. And thank you for being so authentic about all your experiences. I had one question, and I know you're not running a fund any longer, but if you had to guess, what would be an interesting trading strategy right now, given what you know about human psychology and how that is evolving and changing?
Short term, medium term, long term. I mean, there's so many ways to think about it. I have not been as closely in the market as I used to be, but actually what I do feel is that anybody who is contrarian and it takes a long-term view of life, whether it is, whether it's any whether stocks or bonds or the more long term, if you can see beyond all the noise that there is short term, I think there's tremendous opportunity for people who are willing to dig deep. And I think for me right now, and so many people are so short term, everybody's so short term. You have Robinhood, and you have a bunch of other sites like this, and everybody's doing short term things. It's all very crowded, which creates a lot of opportunity for people who are thinking longer term, because nobody's thinking longer term. That's how I would think.
So if I got it right, the variant perception now is like the horizon instead of maybe the information. Is that how you put it?
I'm not sure I follow, but why say that again?
So I'm guessing that what can differentiate you from other people now is not information, since information is more or less symmetric, it's time horizon.
No, I think, yes, information is definitely a commodity right now. Everybody has it, but using that information, but also thinking longer term, because people are using that information, are thinking very short term. It's all about short term profits, right? And I'm just saying, anybody who thinks much longer term has potential to make money. That's all.
Got it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to say anything else, because it's been an incredible evening. If you wanted to add anything, Arvind, it's late for you. You're on the East Coast in your beloved New York.
I am. No, I think just, look, it's an honor to be part of Berkeley. It's an honor to be with all these luminaries. We have Shafi, we have Dick. Berkeley meant a lot to me. It was a very, very formative period for me. I think without Berkeley, I wouldn't be the person I am. No question about it in my mind. And it's an honor to address young people. I think for me, even if I've changed, or not changed, but somehow had an influence on even a single student today, some kind of a positive on a single student today, it's gratifying. It's worth it for me to be a part of it. That's all.
On behalf of everyone, I'll play I don't know if you can hear it, the soundtrack of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have.
Thank you so much.
That was incredible. I'll stop the recording as we have students leave. If you all want to keep talking, it was an absolute honor. I wish you all a wonderful rest of the week and can't wait to see you all on campus.